My legitimate younger sister beat me to it, throwing herself at the poor scholar's feet, insisting on marrying him at all costs, forcing me to give up my betrothal to her, and wanting me to take her place in marrying the prince, whose legs were crushed in a door, a crippled, violent man whose marriage was meant to ward off ill fortune. Looking at the wild joy my sister couldn't hide in her eyes, I knew right then that she too had been reborn. She thought that in our past life, the scholar became prime minister simply because he was destined for greatness, but she didn't know that in our past life, his rise to prime minister was fought for inch by me, while that crippled prince she feared like a tiger was the future ruler of the world.
Sister Nanqiao, everything is my fault. I couldn't control my feelings. I've already secretly committed myself to Lord Lu, and I'm carrying his child. I beg you to be generous and let me have this marriage. As for the marriage to ward off the 7th prince's ill fortune, could you please marry him in my place?
My legitimate elder sister, Shen Baiwei, who usually feared stepping on ants when she walked and required her maids to lay down silk, such a delicate, noble lady, was now kneeling on the tile floor with no regard for her dignity, clinging tightly to my skirt, weeping pitifully. The matriarch of the marquise's household, who was also Shen Baiwei's biological mother, Lady Wang, sat aside with a cold face. She picked up her teacup and slowly brushed away the floating tea leaves.
Nanqiao, since your sister has already compromised herself with young Master Lu, our Marquise's manor cannot have a shameless daughter. He is but a destitute scholar. Just let her have him. As for the 7th prince's manor, that is a marriage bestowed upon Baiwei by the emperor. Samana must go. You are a concubine's daughter. You usually eat the food of the household and use the resources of the household. Now is the time for you to repay that debt.
Father also frowned, waving his hand impatiently.
So it is decided. Tomorrow, go to the government office and exchange the marriage horoscope.
Looking at Shen Baiwei, whose eyes were red from crying on the ground, yet whose eyes could not conceal a look of wild joy and scheming. The corners of my mouth could barely suppress rising. So, that was it. She had been reborn too. In our past life, Shen Baiwei, as the legitimate daughter of the marquise's household, naturally married the man who held immense power in court, but was crippled in both legs and violently tempered, the 7th prince, Xiao Jingyan, while I, an unfavored concubine-born daughter, was haphazardly married off to Lu Yanshu, a destitute scholar who was so poor at the time that he couldn't even scrape together the travel expenses to the capital for the imperial examinations. How proud Shen Baiwei had been back then. On her wedding day, she held my hand and said with eyes full of pity,
Sister, that destitute Lu family can't even afford a bowl of white rice. You will have to suffer a lot after you go there. I am going to the prince's manor. Although the prince's legs are injured, this immense wealth and honor is something you could never wish for.
But what was the result? Not only was the 7th Prince Xiao Jingyan's disability never cured, but his temperament became increasingly twisted. At every turn, there would be killing and bloodshed. Shen Baiwei suffered endless torture in the prince's manor, finding life worse than death. Ultimately, unable to endure the influx of concubines and the endless domestic violence, she actually eloped with a guard. She was dragged back by Xiao Jingyan and had her legs beaten and broken alive. On my side, by contrast, after I married into the Lu family, I rolled up my sleeves to wash dishes and cook. Using my embroidery to fund Lu Yanshu's studies, I stayed up late under the lamp to analyze for him the essays he could not write. I ghostwrote and polished them in his name, ran around to build relationships with his mentors, and blocked the constant difficulties from his awful in-laws for him. In just 6 years, Lu Yanshu won first place in 3 successive imperial exams, rising rapidly through the ranks. At only 28 years old, he became the Grand Secretary of the Imperial Court, and I became the most envied first-class noble lady in the entire capital. I will never forget the day I received my title in my past life. Covered in wounds, Shen Baiwei had crawled all the way back to the capital, begging from the mass graves, hiding in the crowd. She watched me sitting in the 8-carrier sedan chair. Her eyes, as I passed by in absolute glory, were filled with venomous envy and regret. She must have been thinking all the way until her death. If only she hadn't disdained the poor and loved the rich back then. If only she had married Lu Yanshu, then the Grand Secretary's wife, the one receiving all the attention and envy of the world, would have been her. So heaven let her live another life. And she couldn't wait. She didn't even hesitate to make up a lie about being pregnant out of wedlock, ruining her own reputation, just to snatch this high-potential man back into her hands. She thought that, as long as she married Lu Yanshu, she could sit back and enjoy the fruits of my labor, becoming the Grand Secretary's wife of her dreams. At the same time, she could naturally push that living terror, Prince Prince Qi onto me, letting me suffer the broken legs and painful death in her place, killing 2 birds with 1 stone. Her scheme was so loud I could hear it from miles away.
Sister, I beg of you. Can you really watch your sister die?
Seeing that, I remained silent. Shen Baiwei cried even louder, but her hand tightly gripped my wrist. As if terrified I would back out, I pulled my hand back from her tight, red-marked grip, used a handkerchief to gently dab at non-existent tears, and knelt before the matriarch with a thud. My tone was sorrowful, yet resolute. Since Sister and Master Lu have already consummated their love, how could I steal another's beloved? Besides, Prince Qi is still of royal blood. To be able to ease my sister's worries and repay the Marquis Mansion's debt of gratitude is Nanju's blessing. This exchange of marriages, Nanju accepts it. Hearing my compromise, Shen Baiwei instantly stopped her fake wailing. She stared intently at me, as if trying to detect a hint of resentment or anger on my face. But not only did I have none, I was actually exceptionally calm. A trace of mockery flashed across her eyes. She was probably laughing at me in her heart, thinking I was an easy target to be manipulated.
My good sister, I will remember your kindness for the rest of my life.
Shen Baiwei turned her tears into a smile and came over hypocritically to pull me up. I rose with the gesture, dusted off my knees, and said in a gentle tone, Sister, you must be joking, since you love Lord Lu so deeply. I wish you two a harmonious marriage. Locked together forever. Oh no, growing old together in marital bliss. Let go of the urge to help others and respect their destiny. Since you want to pick up that pile of useless mud, I won't stop you. In fact, I'll even hand you a shovel overnight. She has no idea that in our past life, Lu Yanshu's rise to Grand Secretary did not rely on his own talent at all, but rather on my careful planning and calculated steps. He is notoriously incompetent at everything, a useless freeloader who excels only at living off women. Without me, I'd like to see how Shen Baiwei will mold this worthless pile of mud into the Grand Secretary of the Daxuan dynasty. As soon as the marriage swap documents were sent to the government office, Lu Yanshu rushed over to the Marquise's manor in a hurry. He was invited to the pavilion in the back garden. It was now early autumn, and he was wearing a washed-out green scholar's robe. He had a slender build, which, paired with his handsome scholarly face, indeed gave him the aloof look of an unrecognized genius. In my past life, I was deceived by this face of his and his high-sounding talk of morality, wasting my youth on him until, heavily pregnant, I was forced by him to drink a bowl of abortion medicine. Did I finally see the malice beneath his hypocritical skin? Seeing this face again now, I only feel nauseous.
Sister Nanqiao.
Seeing me pass by, Lu Yanshu hurriedly came forward to greet me, his eyes filled with pain and helplessness.
Regarding the marriage swap, I have wronged you, but Baiwei has a fierce temperament, insisting on marrying no one but me, and the Marquis promised personally. I am but a poor, humble scholar, with little say in the matter. In the end, I could not resist the arrangements of the Marquis mansion.
He spoke these words beautifully, clearing himself completely, as if abandoning me, his fiancé, to climb up to the legitimate daughter of the Marquis mansion was entirely out of sheer helplessness. I let out a soft laugh, my gaze sweeping over the slight curve of his lips. Young Master Lu must be joking. My sister is of legitimate birth, with a generous dowry. And she admires you so. Now that you are marrying her, your travel expenses for the future imperial exams are secured. Isn't this a wonderful thing? I yawned, having his true thoughts exposed by me. Lu Yanshu almost couldn't maintain his mask. He coughed awkwardly twice.
Nanqiao, you indeed blame me. You are so sensible. But going to a place like the 7th Prince's estate that devours people raw, how will you survive? If one day my name is on the golden roll, I will surely find a way to keep you safe.
He was painting a pretty picture for me. Even when betraying someone, he still wanted to plant a seed of deep affection in their heart. This was Lu Yanshu's usual trick. I took half a step back, widening the distance between us, my eyes as cold as ice. Watch your words, young Master Lu. I am the prospective princess betrothed by imperial decree. You, a scholar with neither official rank nor position, dare to gossip about the royal family's affairs? If these words reach the ears of the 7th Prince, this tongue of yours, which has just healed, might not be preserved. I hope young Master Lu will behave himself, focus more of his mind on next year's autumn provincial exam, and not disappoint sister. After saying this, I turned and left, without leaving him even a single extra glance. Lu Yanshu froze in place, his face turning pale and blue. He probably couldn't figure out why Shen Nanqiao, who was always shy and delicate whenever she saw him, had suddenly become so cold and sharp. 10 days later was the most auspicious day, and the Marquis of Pingyang's mansion was marrying off 2 daughters on the same day. Marrying off 2 daughters caused quite a stir in the capital. Shen Baiwei's departure time was early, to save face for her, and also to cover up the rumors of the marriage swap. The Marquise's mansion prepared a full 64 dowry chests for her. A 10-mile red dowry procession grandly made its way out of the main gate. Shen Baiwei, dressed in a bright red bridal gown and wearing a pure gold phoenix crown, was supported by the matchmaker as she left the mansion. When passing by my courtyard, she intentionally stopped her steps, lifted a corner of her red bridal veil, and looked at me triumphantly. I was wearing a dark red bridal gown. The 7th prince had just lost 2 previous fiancés, and it was said this was to ward off evil spirits.
Sister, do you think your sister's dowry is grand enough?
Shen Baiwei lowered her voice, her tone filled with the pleasure of revenge.
Although my husband Lu is poor now, he is highly educated and refined. Sooner or later, he will be a dragon soaring to the skies. As for you, go to that gloomy prince's mansion and face that bloodthirsty cripple in your sister's stead. Don't worry. On the day you die, your sister and the Grand Secretary will collect your body for you.
I calmly put a plain silver hairpin on myself without even raising my head. Then, sister, I shall wish you in advance wild veggies to eat every day at the Lu house, and nothing but bitter waters to swallow for every meal.
Stubborn to the very end.
Shen Baiwei sneered, letting down her veil, and flamboyantly boarded her grand, luxurious sedan chair. As I watched her wedding procession depart into the distance, the smile on my lips blossomed completely. Go on, my dear sister. Go and enjoy the fierce battles with your mother-in-law that I endured for you in my past life. Suffer the daily hardships of a dwindling livelihood for your sake, and face that man who seems a refined scholar on the surface, but is actually a wife-beating hypocrite. An hour later, the wedding procession from the Prince 7th's estate arrived. There were no earth-shattering gongs and drums, nor was there festive joy filling the streets. There was only a troop of guards wearing dark flying fish uniforms, their faces stern with the lethal aura of battle, and a black and gold sedan chair draped in eerie white and red silks at its 4 corners, quietly waiting at the gloomy back gate of the Marquise's estate. A faint scent of blood drifted into my nose with the autumn wind. The steward in charge of the procession was a pale-faced eunuch. He did not even offer a smile, only calling out in a shrill, sharp voice,
"Please board the sedan chair, consort. Our prince said it would be inauspicious if we don't see some blood today."
The surrounding servants were so terrified that they shrank back, and even my biological father, in name only, hid behind the door, not daring to show his face. Standing on the steps, I took a deep breath. Everyone thought I was being treated as a sacrifice and sent into hell to wait for death. But what they didn't know was that compared to the hypocritical, sickening, slow death of a frog in warm water, I much preferred this open game of life and death amidst flashing blades. The 7th prince, Xiao Jingyan, the rumored tyrannical fiend who devours people whole. I lifted the curtain of the sedan chair and sat without hesitation into that pitch-black darkness. Raised the sedan. I closed my eyes. My fingers quietly brushed over a row of highly toxic silver needles hidden inside the sleeve of my wedding gown. This game of chess has only just begun. The black and gold sedan chair swayed along the deserted, long street. The bearers marched with heavy uniform steps, devoid of any festive cheer. It felt more like a funeral procession. As the cold wind seeped through the cracks of the curtain, I felt a chill at my fingertips. In my past life, though I was just a concubine's daughter of the Marquise's manor, under the constant suppression of Shen Baiwei, blind and foolish mother, I had long mastered medicine and toxicology. Most of those malicious servants who died accidental deaths in the Marquise's manor were my doing. Though this current body is weak, the knowledge in my head is enough for me to carve out a path to survival in this cannibalistic prince's manor. The moment the sedan chair stopped, there was no bridesmaid to assist me, no brazier to step over, and not even the sound of firecrackers to welcome the bride. Even the pale, clean-shaven chief eunuch's cold voice echoed from outside.
"Side consort Shen, step down on your own. His Highness is not feeling well. He did not wait for you in the front hall. He is already waiting in the bridal chamber."
He emphasized the word waiting with particular malice. I lifted the sedan curtain. What met my eyes was not a decorated manor, bursting with joy, but a massive, deathly silent estate, resembling the gates of hell. Aside from a few dim, red lanterns. Heavily armored guards with their hands on their sabers could be seen everywhere. Every inch of the air here was thick with a murderous aura. No wonder in the past life, before Shen Baiwei had been married here for even 3 months, she was tortured to the point of losing her mind, screaming and begging to elope. I took a deep breath. Instead of letting the bridal veil block my vision, I ripped it off and clutched it in my hand. Under the astonished gazes of the guards, I lifted the hem of my dark red wedding gown and walked briskly, following the chief eunuch toward the inner courtyard. Since I am here to fight for my life, how could I have the mind to play the delicate bride? The bridal chamber was located in the Snowfall Pavilion, at the deepest part of the prince's estate. The eunuch pushed open the door, with no intention of following me inside. Instead, he retreated quickly, as if fleeing a plague carrier.
Please enter, side consort.
The door creaked heavily. Inside, no dragon and phoenix wedding candles were lit. Only faint moonlight filtered through the paper windows, casting a cold, desolate light across the room. A thick, bitter scent of medicine, mixed with a faint trace of blood, wafted toward me. Just as I stepped over the threshold, the door behind me slammed shut with a bang, tightly closed by someone on the outside. It was even locked, almost at the exact same instant. Fully on guard, I dropped my body low and rolled across the floor, barely dodging the attack. With a sharp metallic ring, a gleaming dagger grazed my hair and nailed itself fiercely into the wooden door behind me, with the blade sinking in deep, nearly to the hilt.
Your reactions aren't slow.
A low, hoarse voice, dripping with cold amusement, echoed in the darkness. I looked toward the sound. Under the moonlight, a man in a wheelchair slowly turned around. He wore a black nightrobe, his long hair unbound, draped loosely over his shoulders. That face, even in the dim light, I yawned, had deep-set, striking features and a high, straight nose. His face was as flawlessly sculpted as a master's artwork. Unfortunately, his face was pale, completely devoid of color, and his brow was clouded with a heavy aura of malice and death. This was the living king of hell of the great Xuan dynasty, the 7th prince, Xiao Jingyan, once a proud youth on a fine horse, a god of war prince with illustrious military achievements. He was now crippled in both legs, confined to this deathly quiet estate, barely clinging to life. He casually played, with another exquisite dagger in his hand, his narrow eyes like a venomous snake staring at its prey, locking firmly onto me.
The matter of the Pingyang Marquis household swapping brides. Even though I do not step outside, I have still heard of it. Baiwei didn't want to die, so she pushed you, a concubine's daughter, out to take the fall. What? Seeing that I refused to die, the crown prince can't even bear to send a decent assassin, and sent a piece of trash like you to disgust me.
He was certain I was a spy for the crown prince. After all, the Marquis of Pingyang is the crown prince's uncle, and Xiao Jingyan's legs, rumor has it, were hit during the suppression of the southern border rebellion by a poison arrow secretly shot by the crown prince's faction. I slowly stood up, patting the dust off my skirt. I did not beg for mercy, nor did I defend myself. Instead, I met his cold gaze directly. Your Highness must be joking. Whether I am the crown prince's spy or not, can your Highness not tell? I took a step forward and lowered my voice. If I were truly the crown prince's person, I should be kneeling on the ground crying of my innocence right now, rather than standing here to negotiate with your Highness, a deal that could change the fate of the realm. Xiao Jingyan's hand playing with the dagger paused slightly. A flicker of interest flashed in his deep dark eyes. Then, he let out a cold sneer.
Someone like you, a mere concubine's daughter of a marquis's household, whose biological mother was hounded to death by the legal wife, dares to talk business with me.
Before his voice could fade, he suddenly raised his hand. The distance of 7 or 8 paces between us vanished as he swept up from his wheelchair like a phantom. In the blink of an eye, he was right in front of me. A cold, bony, large hand tightly clamped around my throat. He was not so crippled that he couldn't use his inner force, the rumors saying his legs were broken from the hips, and that he could only sit in a wheelchair for the rest of his life, were nothing but absolute nonsense. A feeling of suffocation instantly washed over me. I was forced to tilt my head up, to look at his face, which was inches away. A very real, tangible, murderous intent surged in his eyes. If the very next word out of my mouth failed to satisfy him, he would snap my neck instantly. I did not struggle. Instead, using every ounce of my strength from the wide sleeve of my wedding gown, I slid out the hidden silver needle. I did not stab him. Instead, I stabbed myself, an acupuncture point on my left wrist. As the silver needle pierced in, a subtle, warm current flowed along my meridians toward my fingertips. I reached back and grabbed his arm, the very one that was choking me, my fingernails digging deep into his pulse point. Xiao Jingyan's brow furrowed imperceptibly. He felt it. Your Highness's legs are not broken. You were poisoned with a rare venom from the southern border, known as the blood crip. I squeezed the words out of my throat with great difficulty, my voice raspy yet exceptionally firm. The poison has already spread above your knees. On the night of the full moon, the 15th of every month, your highness will feel the pain of 10,000 ants gnawing at your bones. Against this poison, the quacks of the Imperial Academy of Medicine are completely helpless. The Crown Prince even believes your highness will not survive past this New Year's Eve. Xiao Jingyan's hand jerked violently. The grip strangling my neck loosened by half. The murderous intent in his eyes did not fade. Instead, it grew even more intense.
Who told you?
In this entire world, those who knew what kind of poison he was afflicted with could be counted on 2 hands, and they were all his absolute confidants. How could a concubine's daughter raised in the inner chambers recognize his affliction at a single glance? Forcing down the acute pain in my throat, I took a deep, gasping breath and looked back at him without a trace of fear. If I tell your highness that not only do I know what poison your highness is afflicted with, but I am also certain that within this month I can control the poison so that it stops spreading, and even enable your highness to stand up again within 3 months. Your highness, do you believe me? The moment those words left my mouth, the temperature in the room seemed to plummet to freezing point. Xiao Jingyan stared intently at me, as if looking at a lunatic, yet also as if examining a highly dangerous and rare treasure. After a long silence, he suddenly let go of his grip. I collapsed onto the floor, clutching my neck and coughing violently. Xiao Jingyan looked down at me from above, sitting back in his wheelchair. He pulled a pristine white silk handkerchief from his robe and slowly, methodically wiped the hand that had just touched me.
3 months.
He said, his lips curling into a cold, mocking smirk.
Huff. If I cannot stand up in 3 months, your death will be 100 times worse than my previous 2 brides. One was turned into a hostage, and the other was skinned to make a folding screen. Which way to die do you want to choose?
What a psychopath. A total psychopath. But the more psychopathic he was, the more it proved he was powerful enough and cautious enough. Having caught my breath, I supported myself against the floor and stood up, completely unfazed by the bloody threat in his words. Instead, I patted my sleeves. If I cure your legs, your highness, what will you give me in exchange?
You dare to negotiate with me?
Xiao Jingyan's eyes turned icy once more. Of course. I straightened my back, my tone showing not the slightest hint of retreat. First, I want the authority to manage the household of this manor. Second, I want a promise from you, your highness. No matter how the imperial court changes in the future, if you ascend to that throne, you must guarantee me a lifetime of glory and wealth, and never be bullied by anyone, especially Shen Baiwei and Lu Yanshu. Xiao Jingyan looked at my eyes, which were full of ambition and calculation, and suddenly smiled.
Huff.
His laughter was extremely low, carrying a sort of tactical appreciation for finding a kindred spirit.
A mere concubine's daughter of the Pingyang Marquis household, yet you possess no small ambition.
He casually tossed the silk handkerchief onto the bright red wedding bed.
Since you have such courage, this prince shall grant you this opportunity, as long as you can fulfill your promise, the things you desire. This prince will give them to you with interest.
It is a deal, I responded immediately.
But
Xiao Jingyan shifted his tone, his gaze falling upon the tightly closed doors.
tomorrow is the return visit to your family. This prince would like to see, how you, the newly elevated side consort of the prince's estate, will deal with your dear father and your dear stepmother, as well as that legitimate elder sister of yours who swapped marriages with you.
He indeed knew everything. It seemed that even though he rarely went out, every single movement within the capital was under the surveillance of this disabled prince. Your highness need not worry. A mere marquis household is not something this consort concerns herself with. For tomorrow's return visit, I must trouble your highness to cooperate with me in putting on a show. I curled my lips into a smile, took a few steps forward, and stood before the canopy bed.
Putting on a show is fine.
Xiao Jingyan suddenly reached out and yanked me toward him with force. I was caught off guard. My entire body tumbled against his hard chest. A faint, cold fragrance mingled with the scent of medicine instantly enveloped me. His hand wrapped around my waist, while his other hand tilted my chin up with complete naturalness. His voice was low and raspy, right against my ear.
To prevent anyone from spotting any flaws tomorrow on this wedding night, we must leave some marks, shouldn't we?
I froze. Before I could react, he had already lowered his head and bit down hard on the side of my neck. I gasped, as a sharp pain instantly shot through me. He did not bite too deep, leaving only, on that fair skin, a conspicuous and intimate red bite mark. He then let go of me, a trace of malicious satisfaction flashing in his eyes.
Shen Nanqiao.
He called my name for the first time, his tone carrying a deadly danger beneath its laziness.
Remember this, from today on. You belong to me. If I ever find you harboring a divided loyalty, I will personally wring your head off. Go to sleep.
He pointed to the spacious canopy bed while he rolled his wheelchair over to the daybed by the window and lay down fully clothed. I touched the burning bite mark on my neck, cursing him as a madman in my mind, but there was no denying that I had won this round. I had not only saved my life, but had also successfully driven an unshakable nail into Xiao Jingyan, this towering tree that would soon touch the sky. Oh, Shen Baiwei, you plotted so hard to push me into this fiery pit. Yet, you have no idea that what is hidden within this fiery pit is a blaze powerful enough to burn down the entire Great Xuan dynasty. As for me, I shall walk through the fire. That night, on that canopy bed, which did not truly belong to me, I slept surprisingly soundly. Not until the sky was bright with daylight did an urgent knocking sound from outside the prince's manor.
Lady side consort. It is time to rise. The Marquise's estate has sent people to escort you and the prince back for the bridal return visit.
The good show was about to begin. In front of the Pingyang Marquise's estate, all was quiet and desolate. Not even a single servant was left to welcome us. Clearly, in the eyes of my dear father and the legal mother, having been carried into the 7th prince's estate last night, it was highly uncertain whether I would come out alive today. Even if I were lucky enough to survive, I would only be thrown back half dead, and was not worthy of having them step outside to welcome me. But I was about to disappoint them. The prince's grand rosewood carriage, drawn by 4 pure black Fergana horses, stopped steadily before the main gate of the Marquise's estate, dressed in a grand red formal gown of yun brocade, embroidered with peonies, and wearing a gold phoenix crown, adorned with 8 treasures of filigree and pure gold. I was respectfully supported by 2 elderly maids as I stepped calmly out of the carriage. Then, I personally took the handles of the wheelchair and pushed the cold, austere Xiao Jingyan, who was clad in a black python robe, surrounded by 2 rows of armored guards with unsheathed blades, as we grandly crossed the high threshold of the Marquise's estate. In the main hall, a touching scene of maternal filial devotion was being enacted.
My child, how have your hands become so rough? Did that Lu family actually make you cook the broth yourself?
The legal mother, Lady Wang, held Shen Baiwei's hand, wiping away tears of distress. I looked up and almost burst out laughing. Though we had not met for a mere 3 days, my haughty and pampered legitimate elder sister looked as if all the life energy had been sucked right out of her. The red bridal return dress she wore, though new, was obvious to anyone with eyes to be made of the most ordinary Hangzhou silk. Even more ridiculous, the pearls and emeralds that used to crowd her head had now been reduced to just a pair of sparse, plain silver hairpins. Lu Yanshu, sitting beside her, still wore his usual lofty, arrogant, and pedantic look. He held his teacup, completely ignoring Lady Wang's tears. He only frowned slightly and said,
Do not blame us, mother-in-law. My family is poor, and my mother is a stickler for rules. Since Ziwei has married into the Lu family, she must naturally observe the duties of a Lu family wife. But please rest assured, mother-in-law, in 3 days, I will shut myself away to study hard. To prepare for the autumn imperial examination. Ziwei's hard days will only last for these few days.
Lu Yanshu's ability to paint pretty pictures has truly become more and more consummate. Hearing the words, prepare for the autumn imperial examination, a flash of wild, feverish hope crossed Chen Ziwei's eyes. She gritted her teeth and said to Lady Wang,
Mother, I am not suffering. My husband is a man of great talent. Once he wins first place in the imperial exam, I will be the wife of the Grand Secretary, the most noble official's wife in the world. What does this bit of grievance matter?
I raised my eyebrows, pushing the wheels of my wheelchair heavily over the threshold, making a sharp, cracking sound. It seems sister has great confidence in brother-in-law Lu's talent. My cool, laughing voice rang out in the main hall. Everyone in the hall turned their heads in unison. The moment they saw me, it was as if they had seen a ghost.
You. You are actually not dead.
Shen Ziwei stood up abruptly, her gaze locked onto me with deadly intensity, sweeping from my highly translucent jadeite earrings to my priceless court gown of Yunjin silk. Finally, her gaze fixed sharply on my neck. Because my collar was slightly open, the clear, round, red mark that Xiao Jingyan had bitten into me last night was starkly exposed to the air. Coupled with my rosy, glowing complexion, anyone who looked would know that on our wedding night last night, not only did I not suffer any torture, but I had actually been thoroughly and passionately loved. What? Did sister hope so dearly that I would die in the prince's manner? I pushed Xiao Jingyan into the center of the hall, looking down from above at her face, which was slightly twisted with jealousy. What a coincidence. The seventh prince cherished me so much, he couldn't even bear to touch a single hair on my head. He even handed all the household authority of the prince's estate over to me. But as for you, sister, I intentionally prolonged my words, sweeping my gaze over her plain, pitiful hair bun, pretending to be surprised. When you got married, sister, you brought 64 chests of dowry. There must have been over a dozen sets of pure gold headwear alone. Why is it that on today's return visit to your parental home, you look so shabby that you can't even compare to the senior maid by my side? Shen Baiwei's face instantly turned the color of pig's liver. How could she possibly tell me that on her first day of marriage, Lu Yanshu's bizarre mother used the excuse of the Lu family's strict rules, stating that a new bride should not be too flashy, and that Yanshu needed silver to bribe the examiners for his studies, and forcibly took away the keys to her dowry chests. Not only that, but she also dragged her out of her warm bed early in the morning to make her wash the entire family's clothes by the well. In my past life, I was the one who suffered these hardships. Now it is her turn to enjoy this ultimate trap. How does it taste?
Impudent.
The Marquis finally came to his senses. Seeing me acting so arrogantly, he slapped the table and barked in anger.
Shen Nanqiao, do you have no sense of propriety left? Is your sister someone you can mock? Apologize to your sister at once.
In their eyes, even if I didn't die, I am still that concubine's daughter whom they can manipulate at will. I didn't budge, and the smile on my face didn't fade even a bit. On the other hand, Xiao Jingyan, who had been sitting in his wheelchair without speaking a word, slowly and deliberately turned the black jade thumb ring on his thumb.
The Marquis certainly puts on a grand display of authority.
Xiao Jingyan didn't even lift his eyelids, his voice lazy and raspy, yet carrying a spine-chilling coldness.
When did it become your place to shout at my consort? Are you reprimanding her? Or are you reprimanding me for failing to teach my wife?
As soon as he spoke, the suffocating aura of bloodshed from his years of leading troops in battle pressed down heavily. The Marquis stiffened, his original anger instantly extinguished by this chill, and cold sweat broke out on his forehead. He quickly stood up and bowed with clasped hands.
Please appease your anger, Your Highness. Please appease your anger, Your Highness. This lower official would not dare. It is just that this girl has no manners.
I am her manners.
Xiao Jingyan leaned back slightly against his chair. His slender finger suddenly tapped heavily on the armrest. With a dull bang, the porcelain teacup held by Lu Yanshu, who had been sitting there putting on high and mighty airs, shattered without warning. The scalding tea mixed with broken porcelain shards splashed directly onto his face. Splashed directly onto him. Lu Yanshu let out a shrill scream, clutched his face and rolled off the chair. A trickle of blood flowed through his fingers, his face clearly disfigured by the porcelain shards.
My lord.
Shen Baiwei screamed and rushed over to hold him. She turned her head, glaring at Xiao Jingyan with eyes wide with fury.
Seventh Prince, you go too far. My lord is a successful candidate of the provincial exam. How dare you use such torture?
A cruel curve hooked at the corner of Xiao Jingyan's mouth, his gaze sweeping over the two of them as if they were ants.
The teacup shattered on its own. What does that have to do with me? A useless commoner who can't even hold a teacup steady is not worthy of being tortured by me.
The hall fell into a dead silence. The Marquis and the first wife both cowered in their chairs, not daring to say another word. Xiao Jingyan's reputation as the living king of hell was on full display at this very moment. Lu Yanshu was trembling all over from the pain, yet he could only bite his lip hard. In the narrow eyes he used to look at Xiao Jingyan, deep resentment, venom, and humiliation were hidden. Looking at Lu Yanshu on the ground, I felt an immense sense of satisfaction in my heart. In my past life, he always looked down on me, accusing me of lacking refinement. Seeing him in such a miserable state now, looking like a stray dog, was truly a pleasing sight. Seeing that the time was about right, I stepped forward, pretending to draw a handkerchief from my sleeve. I handed it to Shen Baiwei. What are you doing, sister? The prince was merely playing a joke on brother-in-law. I lowered my voice, speaking in a volume only the two of us could hear, whispering softly into her ear. Sister, you had better hurry and take brother-in-law to treat his face. If it leaves a scar, and he cannot pass the autumn provincial examinations next year, the examiners of the spring metropolitan examinations the year after will see his disfigured face, and they won't grant him an official post either. Shen Baiwei trembled violently and whipped her head up, staring intently at me.
What do you know?
She slapped my hand away, protecting Lu Yanshu like a hen guarding her food. A frantic confidence flickered in her eyes.
Lu Lang is exceptionally gifted. The policy essays he wrote even made the great scholars applaud in admiration. The mere autumn provincial examinations, the mere autumn exams, he will surely come out on top. Shen Nanqiao, don't celebrate too early. That crippled prince of yours won't live much longer. Once Lu Lang makes the golden roll and succeeds in the imperial exams, reaching the peak of ministerial power, I will have you crawl to me on your knees and beg.
I was waiting for exactly these words from her. In our past life, those policy essays that made the great scholars applaud in admiration, which one of them wasn't ghostwritten by me, word by painful word, after consulting countless rare book volumes for him? Did she really think that by living another life, by snatching away a shell named Lu Yanshu, could she also snatch away the Grand Secretary's brilliance? Then, sister, I shall wait and see. Ha ha ha. I let out a soft laugh, my eyes filled with genuine pity. Then, sister, you must pawn everything you have to buy the best ginseng soup to nourish brother-in-law's body. After all, he is your only bargaining chip to turn your life around. With that said, I stopped looking at the pathetic couple on the ground. I turned back to Xiao Jingyan's side. Your Highness, the tea in the Marquise's manor is too coarse. Your servant is not accustomed to it. Let's return to our manor. Xiao Jingyan took a deep, lingering look at me, seemingly seeing right through the calculation and the satisfaction of borrowing a knife to kill in my eyes. He did not expose me. Instead, he did something unprecedented and reached out, holding my hand which was resting on his wheelchair.
Very well. Let's return to the manor.
With the black armored guards clearing the path from this chaotic homecoming banquet, we, as husband and wife, without even eating a single bite of food, departed in high profile, leaving behind Shen Baiwei holding a wailing Lu Yanshu and the Pingyang Marquis Manor in utter shambles. Back inside the carriage, once we were out of the Marquis Manor's sight, Xiao Jingyan immediately let go of my hand. He reverted to that cold, unapproachable demeanor. He took out a handkerchief and wiped his hand again, as if touching me just now was something utterly unbearable.
The show is over. Shen Nanqiao.
Leaning against the cushions, his gaze was as sharp as a blade.
You seem to harbor immense hostility towards that poor scholar. It can't be as simple as just your sister stealing your marriage, can it?
I was slightly taken aback, and then took a set of rolled-up silver needles out of my bundle and spread them out on the small table in the carriage. Your Highness, you worry too much. I am merely a spiteful concubine's daughter who cannot bear to see others live well. I kept my head down as I organized the silver needles, avoiding his gaze. If your Highness does not believe me, you are welcome to send someone to investigate, but for now, it is time for your Highness to fulfill your promise and let me examine your legs. Xiao Jingyan stared at me for a long moment, seeing that I was unwilling to say more. He let out a cold snort and, in full cooperation, rolled up the trousers of his black python robe. The moment I saw his legs, I couldn't help but gasp. Below the knees, both of his legs had already turned a bizarre bluish-black color. The veins bulged beneath the skin, as if countless tiny, black insects were writhing inside. No wonder the Imperial Academy of Medicine declared him crippled. When this southern border blood goo poison flares up, it not only robs a person of sensation, but also inflicts a torment worse than death by 1,000 cuts. To forcibly channel inner strength, to shatter a teacup under such pain, this level of endurance and willpower made that useless Lu Yanshu unworthy of even wiping his boots.
What? Scared already? Those old fools from the Imperial Academy of Medicine took one look and dropped their medical bags in fright. If you are not up to the task, kneel down and kowtow now, and this prince will grant you a swift death.
I did not speak. I simply drew the longest silver needle and heated it over the candle flame. Bear with it, your Highness. It might hurt a little. The moment the words left my mouth, then the silver needle in my hand, swift and precise, pierced the Shuai acupoint on his thigh. Xiao Jingyan let out a muffled groan. His fists clenched violently, veins popping on the backs of his hands, yet he stubbornly refused to utter a single cry of pain. I looked at the cold sweat that instantly broke out on his forehead, and for some reason, a strange sense of alliance arose in my heart. Shen Baiwei, watch closely. The abusive, crippled bringer of death you feared so much is actually a hidden dragon. Meanwhile, the poor scholar you snatched up like a treasure is about to show his true colors in 2 months during the autumn provincial civil service examinations. On the day the exam results are released, I will definitely present you both with a grand gift. In the blink of an eye, the golden autumn of September arrived, and the triennial autumn examinations commenced as scheduled. Over the past few months, the entire capital had been abuzz with gossip. Half of it was about the rumors concerning the living devil who wasn't supposed to survive past the mid-autumn festival. Prince Xiao Jingyan had not only survived, but, against all expectations, lived in perfect harmony with the concubine's daughter who had married him in her sister's stead. He had even handed full control of the prince's estate over to her. The other half of the gossip was about the legitimate daughter of the Pingyang marquis household, Shen Baiwei, who had rejected a wealthy match, insisting instead on marrying the poor scholar Lu Yanshu. It was said that to support Lu Yanshu's studies, Shen Baiwei had not only pawned most of her dowry jewelry, but was also forced by her harsh mother-in-law to fight with the washerwoman in the south of the city for well water every day, leaving her hands raw and covered in chilblains. But I knew Shen Baiwei didn't care about any of this. She lived in a daily dream of becoming the Grand Secretary's wife, boasting to everyone she met that her beloved Lu would definitely top the autumn examinations as the first-place scholar, and would even be personally summoned by the emperor. Today was the day the exam results were to be released. The long street outside the Imperial Academy was already packed, with students and their families waiting to see the postings. I sat inside the grand carriage of Prince Qi's estate, parked at the end of the most secluded alley on this street, lifting the carriage curtain slightly as I looked coldly at the large red bulletin board at the Academy's gate. The carriage was filled with a dense aroma of medicinal herbs. Sitting across from me, Xiao Jingyan had his eyes closed, his legs soaking in a black wooden tub that emitted a pungent odor. For the past few months, every 3 days, I had to use a highly toxic medicinal bath to draw out the venom from the southern border blood cave for him. The process was as painful as scraping bone and gouging flesh, yet he never cried out in pain once, nor did he even furrow his brow. At this moment, his skin, which was originally dark greenish-black and necrotic, had gradually recovered its normal color. Although he still could not stand for a long time, the inner strength in his meridians could slowly circulate now.
You have such great interest in watching the show.
Xiao Jingyan slowly opened his long, deep eyes through the gap in the carriage curtain. He glanced at the crowded street in the distance.
That fine brother-in-law of yours, if he places high on the list, won't your legitimate elder sister's tail wag all the way up to heaven?
His tone carried a hint of teasing, seemingly testing me. Heh. I gave a soft chuckle, let down the carriage curtain. I turned around to add a ladle of scalding medicinal liquid to his tub. Your Highness must be joking. If a useless fool like him, who cannot even fully memorize the 13 policy essays, could place high, then the imperial examinations of the Great Xuan dynasty would have been rotten to the core long ago. Xiao Jingyan raised his brow slightly, and a sharp gleam flashed in his eyes.
It seems you know his background very well.
More than just clear. I sat upright on the soft cushion and poured myself a cup of tea, a hint of mockery flashing in my eyes. Every essay he wrote over the past half-year consisted of outdated cliches copied from Lord knows where. He could not even formulate a proper thesis. Sister confidently claims he has state-governing talent, merely because in her past life, oh no, merely because she is blinded by love. In our past life, in order to make Lu Yanshu stand out in the autumn examinations, I spent all the personal savings I had secretly hoarded to bribe an old, failed scholar in the capital to polish and refine his essays. I even stayed up all night to study the preferences of previous chief examiners, forcing him to memorize by heart the policy essays I had custom-tailored for him. Not only that, I also used the court trends I had overheard as a concubine's daughter in the marquise's manner to correctly guess an exam question about water conservancy. Without all of this, with Lu Yanshu's brain full of nothing but mushy romance and pedantic nonsense, he might not have even passed the entry-level exam, let alone pass the provincial exam. He is just daydreaming.
Then this prince shall watch this good show with you.
Xiao Jingyan closed his eyes, a bloodthirsty, cold smile playing on his lips. He didn't care about the life or death of a poor scholar. What he cared about was that during this time, the Pingyang Marquis Manor, deeply bogged down because of Lu Yanshu, had gradually begun to reveal its traces of collusion with the Crown Prince's faction, and this was exactly what he wanted. The gong of the Imperial Examination Hall rang 3 times. The announcing officers, holding bright red posters of successful candidates, began to loudly call out the names on the list.
Good news! Master Li Mingyuan of Kuaiji County has won first place in the Renyan provincial exam.
As the names were announced one by one, bursts of ecstatic cheering and tearful wails erupted from the crowd from time to time. Through the gaps in the crowd, I stared intently at Shen Baiwei, who stood at the very front. Today, she had specially worn a bright rose purple brocade jacket and skirt. Unfortunately, the fabric was clearly old and still stained with grease that couldn't be washed out. She looked extremely excited, clutching her hands to her chest, her eyes wide as saucers. As she stared intently at the red list, muttering under her breath, Lu Yanshu stood beside her with his hands behind his back. Although he put on a calm and lofty front, his slightly trembling legs and the bean-sized sweat drops on his forehead betrayed his nervousness at this moment. Behind them followed his overbearing and unbearable mother, Madame Lu.
Announcing the 50th place. Announcing the 100th place. Announcing the 200th place. The end of the list.
Until the last name was read at the top of the officers' lungs. The officers began to pack up the red list and preparing to seal the list. The entire roll call had taken a full hour. Lu Yanshu's name was not on it. He wasn't even listed as a runner-up at the bottom of the list. A strange dead silence suddenly fell over the gates of the tribute courtyard. Shen Ziwei's body stiffened instantly. The ecstasy on her face froze in an instant, turning into a look of disbelief and shock. Unable to believe her own ears, she rushed forward and grabbed the officer who was rolling up the list.
This is impossible. Did you miss his name? I yawned. My husband is Lu Yanshu, the son-in-law of the Marquis of Pingyang Lu Yanshu. How could he fail to make the list? Even great scholars praised the essays he wrote. He should be the top scorer. He has the talent to be the top graduate.
Her sharp screams sounded exceptionally grating in the crowd. The officer stumbled after being grabbed by her. Furious, he shoved her away.
Where did this madwoman come from? The names are clearly written in black and white on the red list. If your husband thinks there is an error in the grading, he can go beat the drum at the Ministry of Rights to plead his case. Why act so wild here at the gates of the tribute courtyard? Don't get in the way of our official duties.
Shen Ziwei was pushed and fell to the ground, her hair becoming messy. She felt no pain, acting as if she had lost her soul. She scrambled on all fours toward the red list that was not yet fully rolled up. With her fingers, she traced each character, searching for his name on it.
I won't. It is really not here.
Her voice trembled, tears hitting the ground like broken strings of pearls. She felt completely drained of strength, slumping onto the ground.
This is impossible. In my past life, Lu Yanshu clearly won all 3 top imperial exams in a row and was appointed directly to the Hanlin Academy by the emperor. He was clearly the future grand secretary of the great Xuan dynasty. Why can't he even pass the provincial exam in this life? Why? Where on earth did things go wrong?
As Lu's mother cursed, she completely disregarded her image and went up to grab Shen Ziwei by the hair. If this were the old Shen Ziwei, as the high and mighty legitimate daughter of the Marquise's manor, she could have pulled out a handful of loose silver to slap this shrew's face until it swelled. But now, all of her dowry had been spent over the past 6 months or so, cheated away under the pretext of buying rare, out-of-print ancient texts for Lu Yanshu, bribing examiners, and smoothing things over through connections, leaving her with absolutely nothing. Even her very last gold hairpin was snatched by Lu's mother to trade for wine and meat.
Mother, please stop hitting her. This has nothing to do with Ziwei. It is those examiners who are blind, and there is something fishy about this exam.
Lu Yanshu, whose face had turned pale from the blow, finally snapped back to his senses at this moment. Not only did he fail to reflect on his own, that absolute garbage of an essay. Instead, she blames everything on the unfairness of the imperial exams. He cast a disgusted glance at Shen Ziwei, who was pinned to the ground and beaten, and did not even stretch out a hand to pull her up. Instead, he turned to the surrounding crowd and shouted loudly,
Fellow scholars, I, Lu, possess immense talent, yet I was pushed off the list by those sycophants. There must be cheating in this imperial examination. I am going to the Shunshan prefectural office to lodge an imperial appeal.
His sore loser and arrogant attitude instantly drew bursts of laughter from the surrounding scholars.
Give me a break. Lu Yanshu, earlier at the poetry gathering, you couldn't even compose a single complete quatrain with your chicken scratch handwriting and mistake-ridden essays. How dare you claim to have immense talent? Stop being a sore loser and making a fool of yourself here. Hurry home and reflect on your actions.
Amidst the mockery and insults, Lu Yanshu's face turned from pale to green, and from green to purple. In the end, he was so choked with rage that he couldn't catch his breath. Spitting out a mouthful of fresh blood, he collapsed right at the gates of the Imperial Examination Hall.
Yanshu, My son.
Mother Lu was scared out of her wits. She didn't even care about beating Shen Baiwei anymore. She rushed forward, throwing herself over Lu Yanshu and wailing loudly. Watching this farce unfold, I sat inside the carriage and finally couldn't help but burst into laughter. In my past life, Lu Yanshu had indeed coughed up blood because others mocked his background, but that time, I was the one who, regardless of everything, carried him on my back through the heavy rain to find a doctor. I was the one who pawned the last jade pendant my mother had left me to buy him ginseng to keep him alive. And it was I who, after he woke up, spent the whole night comforting him to help him regain his confidence in this life, to help him regain his. I stood by and watched. Without my painstaking efforts and planning, he, Lu Yanshu, is nothing but a useless piece of trash. Even his failure in this autumn exam is merely the beginning of his ruin.
Have you laughed enough?
A deep, raspy voice sounded by my ear. Without my noticing, Xiao Jingyan had already stepped out of the medicinal bath barrel. He had casually draped a loose black robe over himself. His long hair was damp with moisture, and he was staring at me with a chilling, deep gaze. His gaze was no longer purely testing me, but carried a hint of scrutiny and a trace of hard-to-detect admiration. Does your highness think this play is entertaining? I suppressed my smile and met his gaze without any evasion.
Very entertaining.
Xiao Jingyan suddenly leaned in close. His rich medicinal scent and distinct masculine aura instantly invaded my senses. He extended his long, cold fingers and gently pinched my chin, forcing me to look up.
But this prince is even more curious. Since you had the ability to predict his failure on the exam, did you also predict what the crown prince's next move would be?
Just as his voice fell, from the far end of the street outside the carriage, there suddenly came a rapid and orderly sound of galloping hooves and the clatter of armor. I peered through the gap, only to see a troop of Eastern Palace guards dressed in official attire, brutally pushing their way through the crowd, heading straight toward Lu Yanshu and Shen Baiwei, who were collapsed on the ground. The leader was none other than the crown prince's most favored head eunuch. The most favored head eunuch held a roll of bright yellow imperial decree in his hand, his shrill voice suddenly cutting through the noisy street.
An oral decree from His Highness the Crown Prince, Shen Baiwei, eldest daughter of the Pingyang Marquis household, received the decree.
The plot began to drag Shen Baiwei uncontrollably toward the abyss. I felt Xiao Jingyan's fingers, which were pinching my chin, tighten slightly. His gaze became extremely dangerous.
Take a guess.
Xiao Jingyan's thin lips brushed against my ear, his voice as cold as a demon crawling out of hell.
Why is the crown prince reaching out to that fool at this of all times? Whom is he trying to disgust?
I did not shrink from his touch. Instead, I grabbed his wrist in return, a cold smile curving up the corners of my mouth. No matter whom they want to disgust, Your Highness, they are getting desperate. As long as they dare to stretch out their claws, we will chop them off. With the imperial examination as the trigger, a true political storm had finally been whipped up. The farce at the entrance of the Gongyuan examination hall came to an abrupt halt with the oral decree from the Eastern Palace's head eunuch, like grabbing onto a final saving straw, disregarding her disheveled hair and the slap marks on her face. Shen Baiwei scrambled to her knees at the eunuch's feet to receive the decree, and Lu Yanshu, who had spat out a mouthful of blood and passed out earlier, now miraculously and slowly regained consciousness, struggling to crawl up. A fanatical ambition flickered in his eyes. The crown prince's oral decree was very simple. Considering Lu Yanshu's immense talent, his failure to pass this exam was truly due to unfairness in the examination hall. Thus, he was specially summoned to the Eastern Palace to temporarily take up an 8th-rank minor post handling documents to ordinary people. This was undoubtedly a pie falling from the sky, but sitting inside the carriage, I smelled a strong scent of conspiracy and blood. In my past life, because of my step-by-step planning, Lu Yanshu fairly and squarely won first place in the provincial exam, so there was never this drama of being exceptionally promoted by the crown prince. Now that he has failed the exam, instead of being dragged into the dust, he was targeted by the crown prince, a venomous snake coiled in the imperial court.
What? Still haven't figured it out.
Behind me, Xiao Jingyan had dressed himself at some point. The black brocade robe with subtle patterns made him look even more unfathomable. He slowly and methodically wiped the black gold dagger that never left his side, his tone cold as frost.
The crown prince is a fool. He has no capable men left under him, to the point of recruiting such useless trash. Though what he fancies is not Lu Yanshu's talent, but rather your good brother-in-law's identity as the son-in-law of the Pingyang Marquis mansion.
I let out a cold laugh in complete agreement. Although the Marquis of Pingyang is the crown prince's uncle, he has been playing both sides in recent years, as slippery as an eel. The crown prince summoned Lu Yanshu into the Eastern Palace. First, he treats him as a dog that can be discarded at any time to keep the Marquis of Pingyang in check. respect, and second, because this dog could be used to bite our Prince Chi's mansion. After all, Lu Yanshu's so-called administrative talent was a complete joke to the examiners, is nothing short of a joke, with the crown prince keeping him close. There would be a great show to watch sooner or later, but I never expected that this dog couldn't even hold out for a month and couldn't wait to come bark in front of me. Half a month later, the side door of the back rooms of the Prince Chi mansion. I had just finished checking the mansion's account books for this month and was about to return to Luokshe Pavilion to prepare the next round of medicinal baths for Xiao Jingyan, when my personal maid, Banksia, rushed in with a strange look on her face to report.
Side consort, the eldest young mistress of the Lu family, from the Pingyang Marquis mansion, is requesting an audience outside.
Shen Baiwei. I raised an eyebrow. I put down the cinnabar brush in my hand. This woman, ever since Lu Yanshu entered the Eastern Palace, had been like a peacock flaunting its feathers, showing off among the noble women of the capital. It was just a pity that her husband's salary from his 8th grade idol post was not even enough for her to buy a box of decent rouge, not to mention her vicious mother-in-law in the Lu family, who found every possible way to squeeze her pitiful private savings. Her coming to the prince's manor today was certainly not to catch up with me, have her wait in the front hall. I stood up, tidied my pleated skirt embroidered with drifting clouds and hundreds of blessings, and walked unhurriedly toward the front hall. Just as I stepped over the threshold, I saw Shen Baiwei sitting on a red sandalwood armchair, holding a cup of freshly brewed pre-rain Longjing tea in her hand. Her eyes greedily swept over the exquisite coral and ruware vases displayed in the hall. Her eyes were practically dripping blood from envy. Hearing the sound of footsteps, she whipped her head around. Seeing my elegant bearing and radiant complexion, her face instantly turned extremely ugly. But soon she suppressed the malice in her eyes and put on a hypocritical smile.
Sister Nanqiao, it has been a long time. It seems you are living a very comfortable life in the prince's manor.
She set down her teacup, stood up, and deliberately puffed out her chest, trying to overpower me in presence.
Not only is your complexion better, but even your entire attire carries the air of a princess consort.
She deliberately emphasized the words, princess consort, her tone filled with sarcasm. I walked over to the main seat and sat down, not even bothering to spare her a glance, merely gently playing with the mutton fat jade bracelet on my wrist. If sister's grand visit today is merely to shower me with compliments, there is absolutely no need. There are many matters to attend to in the manor, and His Highness is still waiting for me to return and attend to him. Just speak your mind. Seeing that I was completely unsparing of her feelings, Shen Baiwei's fake smile finally slipped. She took a deep breath, stepped forward twice, and her gaze suddenly turned cold and haughty.
Shen Nanqiao, don't celebrate too early. How much longer do you think that crippled prince of yours can protect you? His Highness the Crown Prince already highly regards my husband, Lu Yanshu. Once my husband secures his footing in the Eastern Palace, his future will be boundless. Believe it or not, with just a single word from my husband to the Crown Prince, he can bring the prince's manor down in ruins.
Her smug, sycophantic expression was truly laughable. Oh, feigning fear, I patted my chest, my eyes filled with mockery. Then did you come here today, sister, to warn me to prepare for my funeral in advance?
You.
Shen Baiwei choked on my words and faltered. Then, she gritted her teeth, suddenly lowered her voice, and revealed the true purpose of her visit.
For the sake of our sisterhood, I came here today to show you a clear path forward. As long as you cooperate, I can guarantee that after the prince's manor falls, you will still have a way to survive.
Holding back my laughter, I asked, what clear path? Thinking I was intimidated, Shen Baiwei proudly lifted her chin. She drew a small white paper packet from her sleeve and slapped it onto the side table with a thud.
My husband said, His Highness the Crown Prince has always been very concerned about the prince. This medicine is colorless and tasteless. You only need to add some to the prince's daily decoctions. In less than half a month, he will pass away quietly from illness without anyone knowing. When the time comes, in appreciation of your contribution, the Crown Prince not only won't implicate you, but will also grant you a generous reward, ensuring you have food and clothing for the rest of your life.
Speaking of this, she suddenly leaned in close to me and lowered her voice. Her tone betrayed an undisguised malicious expectation.
Nanqiao, this is your only chance to redeem yourself. What is that cripple worth risking your life for? You are nothing but a shield brought in to ward off bad luck. Once he dies, you can take the Crown Prince's reward and run far away. Isn't that much better than being buried with him?
I looked at the packet of poison lying lonely on the table. In my heart, I wanted to applaud the Crown Prince for his stupidity and this couple for seeking their own death. So they are already too impatient to wait and want to administer poison now. In my past life, Lu Yanshu had, at least, struggled in the imperial court for a few years before he dared to secretly trip up Xiao Jingyan. Now, he is nothing more than a dog, wagging its tail and begging for pity beside the crown prince. Yet he actually dares to imagine using such clumsy methods to poison a prince to death. The most laughable one is Shen Baiwei. She was actually stupid enough to run over here and try to turn me against him. She has probably forgotten that just half a month ago, Xiao Jingyan had just used a teacup to shatter Lu Yanshu's front teeth. Before I could speak, from behind the screen at the back of the main hall, an extremely soft, extremely cold chuckle suddenly came. That laughter seemed to drift from the deepest depths of the netherworld, carrying a spine-chilling coldness. Shen Baiwei shuddered all over and whipped her head around to look. The screen was kicked open from the inside, shattering into pieces. Xiao Jingyan sat in his wheelchair, his black robe dark as ink, with a palpable murderous intent swirling in his deep eyes as he slowly appeared in our line of sight.
Poisoning me.
He casually spun the archer's ring on his thumb, his gaze like that looking at a dead person, as it fell on Shen Baiwei's face, which had turned pale with terror.
Does the eldest daughter of the Marquis of Pingyang's household and a dog under the crown prince only have these low-class methods to show?
Prince.
Shen Baiwei's legs went weak with fear, and with a thud, she fell to her knees on the ground. She had never expected in her wildest dreams that the rumored living Yama, who allegedly couldn't even get out of bed, would actually still have the strength to kick and shatter the screen. And he had overheard everything she just said.
Don't do anything reckless. I am the daughter of the Marquis of Pingyang. My husband is the crown prince's favorite.
Although she was shaking with fear, she was still trying to bluff by bringing up her backing. Xiao Jingyan did not even spare her a glance. He merely wheeled himself over and came straight to my side. His slender, cold fingers casually picked up the paper packet of poison on the table, then suddenly brought it close to my lips.
My beloved consort, if we make him drink this himself, how do you think he will die?
His voice was soft, like a lover's whisper, yet it carried a danger that made one's blood run cold. I looked at Xiao Jingyan's handsome, demon-like profile without the slightest hint of fear. I raised my hand, placed it over his hand holding the packet of poison, and gently pushed it away. Then, I turned my head and gave a slight smile to the shivering Shen Baiwei, kneeling on the floor. What are you saying, sister? The prince's kindness to me is as heavy as a mountain. How could I have the heart to poison him? I deliberately emphasized the words as heavy as a mountain, satisfied to see Shen Baiwei's face instantly turn pale with shock. I stood up, walked over to her, and looked down at her from above. Since His Highness the Crown Prince thinks so highly of me, I will certainly keep this medicine safe. I turned to look at Xiao Jingyan, a flash of understanding and ruthlessness passing between us that only the two of us could comprehend. A cruel smile curled up the corner of Xiao Jingyan's mouth. He understood what I meant. Banksia, I suddenly called out to the outside. Escort the eldest young mistress out of the manor. Remember, take her out through the back gate. Don't let anyone see her. As if granted a massive amnesty, Shen Baiwei scrambled to her feet, even forgetting to take the packet of poison, and fled stumbling out of the front hall. Only when her figure had completely disappeared did Xiao Jingyan withdraw his gaze. He casually tossed the packet of poison into the nearby charcoal brazier. The white powder was instantly devoured by the flames, turning into a wisp of blue smoke.
You're just going to let her leave like that?
He looked at me with a half smile. Of course not. I turned around and met his unfathomable eyes. Since my sister came to deliver a gift, if I don't return an even grander one, won't it make our Prince Chi's manor look ungrateful? I walked over to the charcoal brazier, looked at the dancing flames, and said slowly, now that Lu Yanshu has entered the Eastern Palace, the Crown Prince will surely find a way to help him gain some merit. The 5th of next month is the Crown Prince's birthday feast. It is said that the flooding in Jiangnan is severe this year, and the imperial court is short on funds for disaster relief. If the Crown Prince proposes during the feast for all officials to donate, this will not only be an opportunity to amass wealth, but also the perfect time to eliminate his political opponents. I paused, turning to look into Xiao Jingyan's eyes, which had narrowed slightly because of my words. Your Highness, if I am not mistaken, the plan of the Crown Prince and Lu Yanshu is not as simple as just poisoning you. What they truly want is to strike during the birthday feast, framing you for embezzling disaster relief funds, or even plotting treason. The smile on Xiao Jingyan's face vanished completely, replaced instead by an aura of absolute freezing cold hostility. His hands, which had been resting on the armrests of his wheelchair, suddenly tightened, the veins on the backs of his hands bulging. In the next second, without anyone supporting him, he actually stood up steadily from his wheelchair. The legendary living king of hell, who reportedly hadn't set foot on the ground for 3 years, and whose legs were dead, like withered wood. The crippled prince who was treated as a dying man in everyone's conspiracies and schemes. At this moment, his posture was as straight as an arrow, as he stood tall before me, like a god of war emerging from a slaughterhouse.
Since they are tired of living, as for this whetstone, This prince shall accept it.
He walked over to me, step by step, looking down at me from his towering height. His deep voice sounded like war drums on the eve of a thunderstorm.
Shen Nanqiao, at the beginning of next month, for the Crown Prince's birthday banquet at the Eastern Palace, you will accompany me. We are going to reel in the net.
The birthday banquet at the Eastern Palace was a celebration in name, but in truth, it was a trap set by the Crown Prince to extort donations under the guise of relief for the Jiangyan flood. All the civil and military officials were treading on thin ice. The Crown Prince sat high in the main hall, gently tapping his fingertips on the table. His smile was warm, yet it concealed a sharp edge.
My lords, the Jiangnan floods are raging, and the common people are displaced. Taking the opportunity of my birthday banquet today, I hope everyone can open their purses generously to save the people of the world.
With those words, officials began to step forward one after another to present their banknotes. The Crown Prince accepted them all with a smile. Slightly below him on the side, Lu Yanshu, who had just been promoted to the Eastern Palace, stood in his green official robes. Though he was only an 8th-rank minor official, he held his head high and chest out, looking thoroughly like a dog flaunting its master's power. In the seating area for female guests, Shen Baiwei wore a borrowed gold-laced ruby hairpin. Surrounded by several noble ladies who flattered her, she let out a feigned sigh, her voice not loud, yet just enough for those around her to hear.
Hais, it is only because my husband is capable that he could catch the Crown Prince's eye. Unlike my concubine-born younger sister Nanqiao, who married into the Prince of Qi's manor in my place, only to be stuck with a living demon whose legs are ruined and who cannot even get out of bed. For a grand gathering in the capital like today's, I am afraid she can only wash her face with tears back at the manor.
Announcing the arrival of the Prince of Qi and the Princess Consort of Qi.
The eunuch's announcement shattered the clamor. The grand hall instantly fell into a dead silence. Shen Nanqiao wore the formal crimson, purple gold-woven robes of a princess consort, wearing a 9-tailed phoenix hairpin on her head, pushed Xiao Jingyan in his pure gold wheelchair, stepping into the main hall under the escort of 10 black armor guards. Xiao Jingyan, clad in a black python robe, rested with his eyes closed. His pale face exuded a murderous aura from years of holding high office, making everyone feel suffocated. Seeing the two of them arrive, the Crown Prince had a flash of coldness in his eyes, but he quickly put on a smile again, speaking with a fake, insincere grin.
7th brother, since you are unwell, why bother coming in person? Someone bring a seat for 7th brother.
He paused for a moment, then shifted his tone, speaking with deliberate difficulty.
Today, all the ministers have generously donated to the people of Jiangyan. As a member of the royal family, 7th brother, I am sure you will not be stingy either. I wonder how much silver the 7th prince's mansion plans to donate to relieve the plight of Jiangyan.
Xiao Jingyan slowly opened his eyes, a cold light flashing in them, and let out a cold laugh.
Since Imperial Brother has spoken, how would I dare to disobey? However, my contribution is not a vulgar item like bank bills. Nanqiao, bring it forward.
Responding to him, Shen Nanqiao took out a brocade box and opened it in front of everyone. Inside, a thick stack of ledger books was clearly visible. Seeing this, Lu Yanshu stood up immediately, letting out a disdainful snort.
Is the 7th prince playing a joke on your highness? Can these ledgers be used as silver? I'm afraid you simply can't produce the silver, so you are deliberately using this waste paper as a pretext.
Shen Nanqiao raised her eyes, looking at him with a half-smile, her voice clear and bright, as it echoed throughout the entire hall. What is the rush, Lord Lu? What is recorded in these ledgers is far more precious than bank bills. Every word inside tracks the destination of the Jiangyan disaster relief funds, along with ironclad proof of embezzlement and withholding. It is no exaggeration to call them mountains of gold and silver. I just wonder into whose private treasury this money, which should have saved the people, dire straits, ended up in whose private treasury. The Crown Prince's face changed drastically. He slammed his hand on the table and stood up abruptly, harshly reprimanding.
Impudent. Shen Nanqiao, you are just a mere woman. How dare you speak so wildly in the Eastern Palace and slander court officials? Guards, seize this mad woman for me and punish her severely.
Just as the Imperial Guards were about to draw their swords and step forward, Shen Baiwei suddenly rushed out from the female guest section like crazy, pointing right at Shen Nanqiao's nose. She shrieked and roared.
Please calm yourself, your highness. This wench has harbor malicious intentions. Half a month ago, she personally came to find me, stuffed a packet of poison into my hand, and ordered me to poison the 7th prince. She even said that as long as it succeeded, she would guarantee my wealth and glory. Not only that, She also uttered wild words, saying she would conspire with the 7th prince to murder your highness and usurp the position of heir apparent. For such a poisonous woman, even death is not enough to expiate her crimes.
As soon as these words were spoken, the entire crowd went into an uproar. Discussions arose one after another. The Marquis of Pingyang was trembling with fear. With a thud, he rolled down from his chair, prostrating himself on the ground and kowtowing repeatedly.
Your Highness, spare my life. I did not know my daughter had such wild ambitions. I will sever all ties with her. Sever all ties.
A flash of ecstasy crossed Lu Yanshu's eyes. He immediately knelt down in front of the crown prince and kowtowed with a righteous air.
Your Highness, every word my wife said is true. The 7th prince holds heavy military power, yet he has claimed illness for years. In truth, he is building up his own army and harboring rebellious designs. These account books must be the evidence of his corruption and lawlessness. I beg your Highness to immediately order the arrest of these 2 treasonous rebels to restore order to the court.
The imperial guards instantly surrounded the 2 of them. The crown prince laughed in triumph. Xiao Jingyan, however, spoke calmly. Slowly, he placed his hand on the armrest of his wheelchair. With a click, the hidden latch popped open. The living Yama, who had sat in a wheelchair for 3 years and had been declared to have withered, dead legs, actually stood up, swift and agile. His stature was tall and erect, like a god of war. Without the slightest trace of stiffness, the entire hall fell dead silent. Even the sound of breathing was clearly audible. The smile on the crown prince's face instantly froze. His pupils dilated violently. He pointed at Xiao Jingyan's legs, his voice trembling uncontrollably.
Your legs, your legs. They were clearly withered and dead. How is this possible? How could you stand up?
Xiao Jingyan walked down the steps, step by step. His leather boots stepped on the marble floor, making a rhythmic tapping sound. It sounded like the footsteps of the Grim Reaper, suffocating everyone present with immense pressure. He looked down at the crown prince, his tone ice-cold and piercing.
To disappoint you, imperial brother, that bit of southern border poison could not harm me. These past years, I have kept a low profile, just to see clearly how much you, imperial brother, and this pack of parasites around you could actually embezzle from the people's hard-earned wealth.
He waved his hand and declared in a loud voice,
Bring them in.
A large group of heavily armored, murderous-looking officers from the Ministry of Justice and the royal guards flooded into the Grand Hall. The Minister of Justice, leading the way, bowed deeply.
Greetings, Prince of the 7th rank. By the secret decree of His Majesty, we are here to investigate the embezzlement of disaster relief funds by the Crown Prince's faction. We await your instructions, Prince.
The Crown Prince turned deathly pale and staggered back 2 steps.
Impossible. How could father know? You are all imposters. Guards, arrest them all.
But the imperial guards around him were already too terrified to move. The tables turned in an instant. Shen Nanqiao stepped forward, slammed the account book hard against Lu Yanshu's face, and reprimanded him sharply. Lord Lu, see for yourself what is written in this ledger. The crown prince embezzling military funds and pocketing disaster relief silver. Every single transaction is recorded clearly, and the one responsible for falsifying the accounts and handling the laundered money was none other than you. How dare you act so righteous here? Lu Yanshu looked at his own name on the pages, his face turning pale with terror. He began tearing at the account book frantically, screaming.
The crown prince can barely save himself. This isn't true. This is slander. You forged this. Your Highness, I am innocent. I am merely a low-ranking scribe. I knew nothing. It was all done under your instructions.
The crown prince could barely save himself. Seeing that Lu Yanshu dared to implicate him, his eyes turned red with rage. With a kick, he sent Lu Yanshu flying.
You worthless dog. How dare you pocket the funds behind my back and even try to drag me down with you? Death is too good for you.
The 2 of them pointed fingers and clawed at each other, completely exposing their ugly behavior. The civil and military officials in the court all showed looks of disgust. Shen Nanqiao walked over to Shen Baiwei, who had collapsed on the floor. Looking down on her, she pulled a packet of poison and a written confession from her sleeve, throwing them in front of her. My dear elder sister, you said I poisoned the prince. Then what is this secret poison from the Jiangnian Qixing Pavilion all about? Shen Baiwei stared at the packet of poison, her entire body shaking. Her voice trembled as she spoke.
It wasn't me. You framed me.
Framed you? Shen Nanqiao let out a soft laugh, her tone icy. The shopkeeper who sold the medicine is already in the custody of the Ministry of Justice. He confessed that the banknotes used to purchase the drug were stamped with your personal seal as the eldest young mistress of Pingyang Marquis Mansion. Sister, your trick of crying thief to catch a thief is far too clumsy. Looking at her personal seal on the confession, Shen Baiwei's face instantly turned ashen. Completely desperate, she collapsed onto the ground. The Minister of Justice then gave a loud command to arrest arrest the crown prince, Lu Yanshu, and all officials involved in the case and throw them into the imperial prison. The imperial guards rushed forward, putting cold shackles around everyone's necks and dragging them away. As Shen Baiwei was being dragged away, she suddenly broke free from the guard's grip. With her hair disheveled, she lunged at Shen Nanqiao, screaming shrilly,
Shen Nanqiao, you set me up. You venomous woman, you will die a horrible death. I am the legitimate daughter of the Pingyang Marquis mansion. I cannot go to prison. I am going to be the Grand Secretary's wife.
Shen Nanqiao leaned down close to her ear and, in a voice only the two of them could hear, whispered cruelly, the Grand Secretary's wife? Don't even dream about it. Because a large amount of illicit silver was found in her home, your mother-in-law, Madame Lu, has already been sentenced to exile for 3,000 miles. Sister, not only will you not become the Grand Secretary's wife, but you will also spend the rest of your life in the imperial prison with your man, who does nothing but live off women and embezzle money. I yawned. Shen Baiwei let out a shrill scream. Her eyes rolled back, and she fainted completely. Xiao Jingyan walked over slowly and sat back down in his wheelchair. It wasn't that he couldn't stand, he just didn't want to expose his full strength before the old emperor. He reached out and tightly held Shen Nanqiao's hand, his voice gentle yet firm.
Shen Nanqiao, let's go home.
Shen Nanqiao held his hand in return, her eyes filled with smiles. All right, let's go home. This gamble, where they staked their lives, they had ultimately won. 3 months after the mutiny at the Eastern Palace, the Crown Prince, on charges of embezzling disaster relief funds and conspiring with court officials, was stripped of his heir-apparent status by the old emperor, demoted to a commoner, and confined to the imperial clan court. The officials who had aligned themselves with the Crown Prince were purged entirely for forging accounts and pocketing kickbacks. Lu Yanshu was sentenced to execution after the autumn equinox. Though the Marquis of Pingyang's household tried desperately to distance themselves, they were still stripped of their noble title, their property confiscated, and the family exiled. Shen Ziwei followed her husband's family into the imperial prison, the death row ward. On the day of the winter solstice, the capital saw its first heavy snowfall. Shen Nanqiao, clad in a white fox fur cloak, stepped into the gloomy and cold imperial prison. The head jailer obsequiously led the way, guiding her through the dark, narrow corridors. Standing outside the iron bars of the cell, she saw Shen Ziwei and Lu Yanshu huddled in the corner. Shen Ziwei's hair was disheveled and wild, her prison uniform torn and filthy, and her hands covered in ulcerated chilblains. One of Lu Yanshu's legs had been broken, and he was burning with a high fever, muttering deliriously about being the top graduate and the Grand Secretary.
Are you here to mock me?
Shen Ziwei gripped the iron bars tightly, her dull eyes filled with wild jealousy and venomous malice, as she shrieked her questions at Shen Nanqiao.
Shen Nanqiao, why is it that in our past life you got to be a first-rank noble consort, and in this life you still get to be a princess? I clearly snatched Lu Yanshu away. I should have been the wife of the Grand Secretary. Why did I end up like this? This is not fair.
Shen Nanqiao gestured for the head jailer to dismiss himself, slowly squatted down, and looked at her distorted face through the iron bars. Her tone was calm, yet every word was like a knife. Fair? Dear sister, do you still not understand by now? What you snatched away was never some pillar of support that could bring you wealth and success.
Oh, what do you mean?
Shen Baiwei stiffened all over, her voice trembling. In our past life, when Lu Yanshu failed the provincial exam, it was I who sold all the jewelry left by my mother, bribed the disciples of the chief examiner, and secured the exam questions for him. Only then did he manage to pass. Shen Nanqiao spoke slowly, each word striking like a hammer against Shen Baiwei's heart. Those policy essays of his that the great scholars praised so highly, every single one was written by me over countless sleepless nights, consulting endless rare volumes, and ghostwriting them in imitation of his handwriting. His steady rise in officialdom was because I socialized everywhere, warded off open and hidden attacks for him, and used my exquisite medical skills to win over the powerful, paving every step of the way for him. She let out a soft laugh, her tone thick with mockery. Sister, the one you fought so hard to snatch away, is nothing but a piece of trash who, without me, could only rot away in the mud. The match made in heaven that you imagine was always just charity I bestowed upon him. The truth was, like a thunderbolt from the heavens, striking Shen Baiwei hard on the crown of her head. She widened her eyes in disbelief, her lips trembling violently, and a strange rattling sound came from her throat. Yet she could not utter a single word. It turned out that all her scheming in this lifetime had been a joke from beginning to end.
No, impossible. You're lying to me.
Shen Baiwei went completely mad, shaking the iron bars frantically as she wailed and begged for mercy.
Shen Nanqiao, I was wrong. I'll give Lu Yanshu back to you. Give me your position as the princess consort. All right. I will never fight you for it again. Please save me.
At this moment, Lu Yanshu, who had been unconscious, was awakened by the crying. Hearing Shen Baiwei offer to give him back to Shen Nanqiao, he instantly flew into a rage. Dragging his broken leg, he crawled over, like a madman, tightly grabbed Shen Baiwei by the throat, and roared,
You jinx, it is all your fault. If I hadn't married a harbinger of doom like you, how could I have been dragged down by the crown prince's palace? How could I have ended up like this? I'm going to kill you.
Let go, you useless piece of trash. It is your own incompetence. What does it have to do with me?
Shen Baiwei struggled desperately, swinging her hand back and slapping Lu Yanshu across the face. The two bit and tore at each other in the filthy cell, their curses and cries blending together in an utterly pathetic display. Shen Nanqiao stood up, the last trace of hostility in her eyes completely dissipating. She coldly left them with a parting word, tear each other apart slowly. I hope that on the road to the underworld, you can remain a pair of resentful prisoners, never to be parted. With that, she turned and walked out of the imperial prison without looking back. Outside, heavy snow was falling, wrapping the entire capital in a coat of silver. A large, luxurious black and gold carriage was parked by the roadside. The carriage curtain was lifted, and Xiao Jingyan stood there holding a 24-rib oil paper umbrella painted with red plum blossoms. Standing tall and straight as a pine tree, he stood firmly in the snow. He had long since stopped needing a wheelchair. Seeing Shen Nanqiao come out, he stepped forward quickly, holding the umbrella steadily over her head. He reached out to take her freezing cold hand, wrapping it inside his sleeve. With a tone of fond teasing, he said,
Is the show over? You look so pale. Don't tell me you let that miserable couple anger you.
Shen Nanqiao shook her head, a hint of a smile in her eyes. I won't. I just feel that they finally reaped what they sowed. Xiao Jingyan leaned down and gently bit her earlobe, his voice low and husky.
My princess has no need to get upset over them. Besides, whether my legs have fully recovered. Didn't the princess already test and verify that yourself last night?
Shen Nanqiao's cheeks flushed hot, and she gave him an annoyed, glaring look. How inappropriate. Xiao Jingyan chuckled softly. He bent down, scooped her up in his arms, and steadily placed her inside the warm carriage.
Let's go back to the manor and get you warmed up.
The following spring, the old emperor passed away, and the secret imperial decree of succession was revealed. Having bided his time for years, Xiao Jingyan ascended the throne as the new emperor. He changed the era name to Jianzhao. On the day of the coronation ceremony, Xiao Jingyan bypassed the tedious formalities and personally held Shen Nanqiao's hand as they walked up the white jade steps, enthroning her as his empress. The master of ceremonies' announcements echoed through the clouds. Dressed in a vibrant red phoenix gown and wearing a crown of 9 dragons and 4 phoenixes, Shen Nanqiao stood side by side with Xiao Jingyan. She looked down at the civil and military officials kneeling in dense crowds below the steps. Those who had once humiliated and plotted against him had long since turned to dust and no longer exist. Xiao Jingyan turned his head. In his deep eyes, the vast empire was reflected, and also her silhouette, with a gentle tone.
What are you thinking about?
Shen Nanqiao snapped out of her thoughts, clasped his hand in return, our fingers interlocking, her eyes curving with a warm smile. I was thinking about that birth chart for the marriage swap. It really is the best gift I have ever received in my life. If not for that birth chart, I wouldn't have met you, nor would I have what I have today. Xiao Jingyan laughed heartily. In front of all the officials, he pulled her into his arms, his voice dominant yet gentle.
This world belongs to me, and you belong to me as well. Should anyone dare to harm you in the slightest, I will execute their entire clan, wiping them from existence.
The sunlight poured down, illuminating this emperor and empress, who had faced life and death together to stand side by side in this lifetime. Shen Nanqiao did not just win, she won most spectacularly.